Hi folks, today I'm going to be showing you how to paint up this D20 warrior from Reaper Minis. Alright, so with the Bones Minis, they are supposed to be ready to paint right away. I have washed it with soap and water and dried it off, and now I'm painting it with Screamer Pink. And you will see, I've been running into the base paint, if you water it down at all, it does kind of retract, pool, and you really have to push the paint in. So unfortunately, I think with this new, this was in the Bones 4 kit, and it's nice because it's a harder plastic than the previous Bones. So there you can see the Screamer Pink all painted in. But I do find that it doesn't seem to like to take paint quite as well. So now I'm going through and painting the eyes in dead white. And I'm doing this before painting the rest of the body because I can be a little sloppy and then essentially go back in and paint in the eyelids. So as I was saying, it is nice that it is a nice harder plastic than the previous Bones. It feels like it's less likely, like in hot days or if you leave your mini in the sun, that it's going to kind of like slowly start to melt. But it doesn't seem to like paint quite as much. So I think moving forward, I'm going to end up just priming these before painting. You know, if you're not doing super detailed, you might not find it as frustrating, or if you're using just the paint straight out of the pot, that I've found it doesn't seem to pool or retract back. That's maybe not the best word for it, as much. But you know, I like to, where I put the paint, that's where the paint stays. So moving forward, gonna prime it. So yeah, I'm painting in these teeth and the eyes, trying to be careful, but I will go back through and touch up as I'm doing a second coat in Screamer Pink. So there you can see. Now I'm going to go through and I'm actually going to do the numbers next, and I'm using the Contrast Black Templar. Now the reason I'm using a contrast paint here is because I wanted it to have that inked look, but you know, doing a shade, I would probably have to do, like if I was using Nuln Oil, I'd have to do multiple layers to really get it dark enough. And if I was using regular paint, I would be watering it down to the level of contrast. So I figured, hey, this might be a really good use for contrast, and I found it worked really well. It gave it that nice clean look, numbered, inked look. All right, now I'm going in and painting the eyeballs, the irises, and because these eyes are a little bit bigger than most minis, I'm actually able to do the iris as well as the pupil. And so painting this in using a fine brush and just very slowly trying to get kind of a circular look to it. You don't want a full circle. You want the eyelids to kind of cut it off a little bit. And also when you're painting in, paint in your minis slightly cross-eyed. It will make them, keep them from looking like they're googly-eyed and kind of not staring it out into anything. That's something I picked up from puppetry, that yeah, if they're slightly cross-eyed, it looks like they are focusing on something instead of just kind of dead-eyed staring out into the world. And now I'm going in and doing the pupil, and this I'm using a super detail brush. And I'm using the contrast just because the black paint that I had has dried out a little bit, and I find when you're doing pupils, you really want, you know, a very fine paint. All right, so now I'm going back through with the Screamer Pink, and I'm putting on a second coat. This is just to really provide a nice even base coat, and also going back in and picking a kind of painting over any blobs and stuff like that from painting the eyeballs and the numbers. So I'm going to go through like around the lips. Oops, sorry, you can't see that part right there. going around the lips, getting anything, and making sure I've got this really nice, even base coat. Again, sorry, this moved out of frame. You can see I am touching up around the eyes right there. So again, yeah, just kind of going in and essentially painting the eyelids on. That's a nice way to handle eyes where, you don't have to worry as much about like, oh God, trying to paint it. Or if you want to do a circle and then paint the eyelids over it, hey, that works. All right, now I'm going through with a mix of Screamer Pink and Pink Horror, and this is quite watered down, and I'm painting in highlights. So I'm trying to start at the top of the mini where light would be hitting it the most, and then moving down. And I'm also using this for a bit of edge highlight here and there to kind of accentuate the shape, the polyhedral dodecahedron? Yes, shape of the D20. I like these little adventurer guys. When I saw them in the Bones 4 pack, I was like, oh, I definitely want to get them. Who knows if I'll actually use them, but they seem like pretty cool to have on the shelf. And hey, if you need just an adventurer or a wizard or a rogue, you've got some fun basic stand-in minis that you can use. So yeah, I'm going through and painting, also hitting up like the facial expressions, going back in and doing another coat, just kind of slowly building up these layers here of color. I have been finding kind of watering down your paint and mixing two colors together and then slowly building the layer helps to have a little bit more subtle transition between the paint colors. So yeah, you can see I'm kind of doing a little bit of an edge highlight here, trying to keep it as straight as possible. And in the close-up, this mini might not look quite as good as it does when you're maybe about a foot or two away. And that's something to keep in mind of as you're painting stuff. How close are you actually really going to be to the mini when you see it most of the time? Most stuff you just need to have look good from the table or however far away you plan to be, and not to stress too much on it. So yeah, I'm just kind of slowly building this color up, and you are seeing that the color goes on quite a bit brighter and then dries down a little bit, so don't let that intimidate you too much as you're painting it on going, oh no, this is so much brighter. It will dry down darker in most cases. All right, so now I'm going through with just Pink Horror. Again, this is quite watered down, probably about 1-to-1 water to paint, and just hitting kind of all the really highlighty bits. So now that I'm done with the body, I'm going to move on to all the accessories, and I'm basing in all of the metal bits with Stormvermin Fur. I thought about using a more of a blue gray here, but I decided to go with this to kind of help keep it in that warmer color hue, kind of a warm palette for this guy, and tie some of these colors together. So I'm just basing in the sword, the elbow and knee guards, as well as the shield in this color. I did paint the boots and gloves with Mournfang Brown, and now I'm going back in with Contrast Skeleton Horde to do the teeth, doing a couple layers, trying to, add a little bit of depth to it. I'm using this instead of a shade, just because I find this looks really great on bone. Teeth are bones. And I also dot a little tiny bit of it into each corner of the eyes. Again, this just kind of helps add a little bit more depth to them. I'm doing very, very light amount. Be very careful with what you're doing with this. And painting the eyebrows in Karak Stone. These big bushy eyebrows. I enjoyed. I like the details on this and the facial expression. These are fun guys. And then I also watered down Karak Stone, and I'm using this to go in and paint the gloves and boots. Now, if you wanted something that wasn't quite as much of a contrast, you could mix the Karak Stone with Mournfang Brown and kind of build it up. Now I'm going through with Dead White just to bring the teeth back a little bit wider on those smooth surfaces. But yeah, if you didn't want quite as much contrast between the shadow and light on the gloves and boots, I kind of liked the way that looked. Alright, so now I'm going to go through with Agrax Earthshade, and I'm going to paint, add in some shade to the eyebrows, and I'm also going to put this on the boots and the gloves. You know, one thing to keep in mind is trying to balance out where you're using colors. That's why I did the boots and the gloves the same color, so that it kind of helps add some symmetry, balance out. You know, if I could have done the cuff of the boot in the same color as the main color of the gloves, that's another way that you could have tied some of those colors in while having a little bit more going on. But these guys are kind of so simple. I like keeping the color palette fairly neutral for the accessories and let the dye be the main focus. Alright, so now I'm going back in with Contrast Black Templar to paint some of the darker bits of the sword and then the inside of the shield. You know, I wanted to darken this up quite a bit without going a full black, so I figured I'll try out, see how layering the Black Templar over a gray. I'm pretty happy with it. It kept that kind of warmer color because of the underhue of the Stormvermin, but definitely, you know, it's an almost black. And actually on the shield, it has almost a little bit of a like lacquer looking effect, because it did settle a little bit more. If you look it up very up close, it did settle a little bit more into the outside of the shield. So that was a cool use. All right, so I did prime, that's the word, I did prime the base, and I'm doing Stormvermin Fur. I did a couple layers of this for the base color. You know, you can see I'm painting it on, and because I have watered it down, it's not the most saturated, but that was 3 layers, pretty quick. They dried pretty quickly, and now I'm going through with Stormvermin Fur and white mixed together, again watered down. So, and you know, this goes on pretty light, but I wanted that cobblestone look, and it does dry down quite a bit, and I'm not too worried. The paint is a little on the patchy side. I maybe could have mixed it a little bit better, but for stones, stuff like that, I think that works just fine. And then I am going to go back over with a ink shade, a shade. Words sometimes are difficult. So yeah, you can see, so here's the paint's still wet and the paint's dry. You know, didn't dry down too much darker, but adding in this Nuln Oil, it's going to really darken up those cracks, make those cobblestones pop, as well as it brings I'm painting it over the whole thing, so it's also bringing that top bit down just a little bit. And I'm not focusing on doing too many layers with the base. Again, sorry about that. Again, the main focus I wanted to be on the dye. So, and that's, you know, there are certainly some ways that you can cut corners with certain stuff. You know, if you don't want to have a super complicated base, you don't need to. All right, so here is the finished mini. And this certainly is a you know, up close you can see all of the imperfections in it, but I find it's a really good paint for tabletop. God, I love that expression on him. Just that, I think this looks really good from the front. I could have done a little bit more with the edge highlighting, a little bit more, maybe add a little bit brighter color up top and darker down bottom, but I'm pretty happy with it. A big thanks to our patrons, especially Sean. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron. Alright, so there you go. If you paint up any of these dice adventurers, I'd love to see pictures of it. Let me know what you think, and if there's any of the rest of them that you want to see me paint up, let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and share it with somebody else who's going to be painting one of these or looking for just a fun painting video. Alright, we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!